My name is Evelyn and I'm 55 years old. I'm going to tell you about the time I spent with my son's friend. We shared moments in the car, at home, and in places you wouldn't even imagine. Trust me, you'll be shocked. I've been married to Richard for more than 30 years, and during that time, everything was great. We laughed, shared intimacy, and felt the joy of starting a family. However, as the years went by, Richard grew distant, stopped touching me, stopped saying affectionate words, and most of the time, he didn't even notice me. I felt like a ghost in my own home at times, and the only thing that kept me going was my son, Ethan, whose enthusiasm and joy kept me going. Recently, though, something changed, and Ethan's best friend, Lucas, began to visit more frequently. After a while, I realized that Lucas, who is 23 years old, didn't see me as just another host. The way he looked at me changed, and for the first time in years, I felt alive again. He is athletic, charming, and incredibly captivating. At first, his presence reminded me of the energy and excitement I used to feel when I was younger. Richard and Ethan were out of town for a few days. One evening, Lucas stayed behind and asked if I needed help with anything. We ended up sitting down to coffee and talking, and it turned into one of the most honest conversations I've had in years. I told him everything, including how Richard had become distant, how lonely I felt, and how I was at a loss for what to do. Lucas listened to everything I had to say that night, and I was struck by how understanding and kind he was. The way he looked at me made me feel seen. I hesitated when he offered to stay, but when our hands touched for the first time in forever, it filled a void I didn't even know existed. That night, Lucas and I spoke for hours, and I opened up to him completely, telling him about the passion and emptiness in my life that I hadn't felt since I was young. The way Lucas listened, the respect and care in his eyes, moved me deeply. He wasn't just a listener, he felt like a friend. But there was a pull between us that went beyond friendship. Lucas slept on the couch that night, and I went to my bedroom, but when I closed my eyes, all I could see was his face. The next morning, as I was making breakfast, Lucas appeared in the kitchen with a warm smile. He said, "Good morning, Evelyn, that smells amazing." As I smiled back, I realized my heart was racing faster than it had in years. For the next few days, Lucas kept stopping by. He knew I was alone until Ethan and Richard returned, so he stayed around to keep me company and help out. But with each passing day, the distance between us grew smaller. One afternoon, as we sat in the backyard drinking tea, Lucas said, "Evelyn, you know I'm really drawn to you, don't you?" I was surprised, but I also felt a rush of excitement. I didn't know what to say, so I just slipped down. Then Lucas reached for my hand and whispered, "You're an incredible woman, and I need you to know that." That moment was a turning point. With a burst of courage, I didn't pull my hand away. I stopped worrying about whether it was right or wrong, and after I followed my heart, our connection evolved into something much more than friendship. Lucas gave me a sense of specialness and desire that I hadn't had in years. But this new bond also carried with it an internal conflict. I was always caught between right and wrong, and my relationship with Lucas overshadowed my marriage to Richard. But every time I looked at Lucas, I couldn't deny the reality of the times we spent together. One day, Lucas and I went on a little out-of-town trip, and as we strolled along the beach, it felt like an escape to me. My eyes welled up with tears as Lucas grabbed my hand and whispered, "When I'm with you, nothing else matters, it's just us." His words brought back memories of how love and care could cure a person, and this was just the beginning. The time I spent with Lucas that day at the beach outside the city was unforgettable. The light breeze, the soothing sound of the ocean, and the connection between us all felt like I was dreaming. But it was time to head back. As we got in the car and started driving home, I felt a strange sense of calm mixed with excitement. The bond between Lucas and I grew stronger every day, but I was also getting more and more afraid of what would happen if Ethan found out and Richard began to suspect something. At this confusing point in my life, I wasn't sure what to do. I was in the passenger seat as Lucas drove, and the vehicle was filled with soothing music that complemented our calm journey. Lucas would sometimes give me a smile and remark, "Today was really great, Evelyn." I couldn't help but feel my heart pounding during those moments. At one point, Lucas pulled the car over to a peaceful area by the side of the road and asked, Should we stop here for a bit? I couldn't respond because I could tell by the warm expression in his eyes, so I just nodded slightly. The silence in the car spoke louder than words when Lucas gently reached out and took my hand. All of my thoughts were scattered, and the closeness we shared was difficult to describe. Without rush, everything that happened in those moments flowed naturally, and Lucas was gentle and understanding with every move he made. There was a connection between us that I had never felt before. It wasn't just physical, it was something deeper. It was a moment where I truly felt wanted and loved. During this brief pause, something touched both of our souls, and those minutes in the car will always be remembered as an unforgettable experience. I could tell by the sight in Lucas's eyes that he felt the same way about me. As we started the car and drove home, it seemed like the world had stopped, and we were alone. I felt both at peace and a little guilty, but I chose to hold Lucas's hand and keep the magic of the moment alive, because these were our moments, and no one could take them away. Our relationship deepened after that night. Lucas didn't just get physically closer to me, he made me feel like he truly understood me. What happened in the car that day was a turning point for us both. When we got home, Lucas's gaze hadn't changed. He was still looking at me with the same warmth, desire, and admiration. Richard was still lost in his own world, and I was filling the void in his life with Lucas's presence. However, our relationship wasn't merely a coincidence or a passing fancy. Every time we met, Lucas reminded me of something I had forgotten for years, that it's never too late to feel alive, loved, and desired. Our time together felt like little miracles in the middle of a routine day, and his touch and soft words about how special he made me feel weren't just physical attractions. They were indications of a profound connection. Our story wasn't a typical love story, rather, it was an adventure full of impossibilities. Yes, I don't know where this story is going, but Lucas brought back feelings I had forgotten. We still occasionally meet in secret when Richard isn't home, and on those nights, I wonder what the future holds. But when morning arrives, I think about how special Lucas makes me feel, and all my fears go away. Maybe I'm not doing the right thing, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm truly alive. In the end, we all live for the feelings we have, and Lucas showed me just how powerful those feelings can be.